Hello, I'm Anavultus, and today I'm with. Please introduce yourself.
Yes, sure. My nickname on YouTube is UBERSOY. There should be a link in the description to my YouTube channel under the video at a later point.
Yes, I
And
will edit it
yes,
once the stream is done.
mhm. And to properly, I guess, describe my political leanings would be that I lean on the left economically, and I guess I lean on the right in terms of culture and the way I would like the society to be structured.
Yes, I would suppose that I probably lean on the right in those ways as well. Although economically, I am probably also more on the current right. Although I would say that I'm a localist economically, so in that sense,
Hmm.
I'm not strict right on it.
Yes. Well, would you say you are concerned about wealth and income inequality?
Well, I'm not really concerned about income inequality per se. I don't think that it in itself is a problem. Now, I do think that people not being able to take care of themselves is a problem, though.
Sure. Yes.
So I'm not in favor of an equity in that sense.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I'm not really in favor of equity either. I just want the class tension to be minimized as much as possible, and I don't want the top three people owning the wealth that is, as much as the bottom 40%, I think, currently are owning. Um,
Yes, but I think we
so
would probably, because I know you're a Keynesian, or at least
yes, yes,
that we would agree that some inequality in ownership
of
is
course.
natural in a healthy economy. Yeah.
Yeah, it is natural, and it is also good for the economy. But I would still like it to be minimized
Yeah.
because when it's not minimized, it creates class tension, and because of that, we have socialists running around and um, getting popular in the discourse. And now there are more socialists than there are capitalists in the United States amongst the millennials and Generation Z.
Yes. So I do think an important part, I suppose an important concern economically is the reduction of tension.
Yes, yes,
And
yes.
from a perspective of realism, I would say
Mm-hmm.
that the reduction of tension is important for the maintenance of the state and therefore the surviving unity of its power structure.
Mm-hmm. Okay. That's an interesting way to put it, I guess. Um, but there are no objections from me. I guess we could maybe move on to the other part, or maybe have an argument about right-wing culture and how we perceive it. I guess you know.
Yeah, I would suppose the fundamental question before we decide
Mm-hmm.
what right wing culture is deciding
Yes.
what right wing is in general.
Yes. Yes.
Because
So the famous discourse has been that the right is like, oh, they are. Well, the term left and right actually originated because of the French Revolution, and those um, who were on the left, they were for progress and for reforms, while those on the right were for conservatism and keeping the status quo. And you know what? I reject this terminology. Um, for me, right wing does not really equal to standard conservatism, although there are certain correlations. Um, and the way also, I mean, if you look at how fascism is perceived, even among the left, it is perceived as hard right, as hardcore right, even though libertarians claim it's on the left. But the fascists themselves, they see themselves as progressives. If you know, get a little bit acquainted with it. I mean, I'm not really a fascist. I'm far from it, but uh, I'm just rejecting the terminology that the right is status quo. And for me, right wing culture, I guess, is a culture that reinforces communities of strength, where you're strengthening your society, as opposed to being for communities of weakness that I see the left in modern day. So that's how I see it.
Yes. I posit that there are three general methodologies for historically defining the left right dichotomy.
Mm-hmm.
And the first one, the one that I think a lot of people use, is they use a specific left right dichotomy that is functionally used in their political system, and then they extrapolate it onto other political systems. The problem with this is that as the existing left right dichotomy changes, it also therefore changes your historical perception of what's left and right. So I don't think it's
Yes.
particularly useful. The second one
Mm-hmm.
is to view the left right dichotomy as something that is unique to each society. And while this is useful internally for those societies, it's not very useful if you're trying to compare things or if you're trying to generally decide what is left and right. And the third historical method is to take the French Revolution and to therefore define left and right as being positions specifically relating to that famous moment where there was a question between the authority and the sovereignty of the king and the sovereignty of the people. So in that sense, left wing positions would be any position that affirms popular sovereignty.
Yeah. Well, they don't really see that anymore. I mean, I don't think the left stands for it at this point.
Yes, I think that's something that can be said in certain ways, but of course, the left can be very diverse in the definitions it uses for the people. For example, popular sovereignty in Marxism would be the sovereignty of the proletarians, for example.
Mm-hmm. Um, well, I mean, I really don't think those people are populists. They are more people who are vulnerable, kind of identitarian. The left doesn't really strike me off as populist. It's maybe Bernie Sanders to an extent, but they generally, well, I mean, if that's what I perceive to be as popular sovereignty.
Yes, and I think
Be-
that populism can be examined in a few different ways as well. For example, there's a proactive populism where the polemics decide the popular good. There's a reactive populism where the popular good is decided by the people and then is reflected by polemics. and
Mhm.
and then there is an interactive populism where the polemics are popular if they coincide with the popular dynamic, but then they can be disjointed at another
Yeah,
time.
well, that maybe seems more like the left, the last one.
Yeah.
Um, Oh, I got a friend request. Sorry. Yeah, that's very interesting, I guess. Hmm.
But
Well,
so
yeah.
when it concerns what actually are right wing positions, that
Yes.
that is, I think, a very interesting question, because I would say one right wing position would be the idea, perhaps, that virtues are not virtues are not something that is ephemeral or something that is uh, short lived, but virtues exist in a long sense, long term virtues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I mean, I guess, are you religious as well?
I am religious, yes.
Okay, yes, well, that seems to be, give me a little bit of the universalist Christian, slash constitutionalist vibes. I mean, that I would say that is a fraction of the right, certainly. I don't think I don't, uh, I mean, I don't particularly belong in that faction.
Yes. So you think that virtues are highly
Well,
relative, or
um, well, I mean, the way you explained it, it gave me some sort of a universalist Christian vibes. So I identified it to
yeah?
be there.
Well,
Um,
I think I tried not to universalize it by saying that virtues are long term rather than saying that they're eternal, even though that is my actual position.
yes, yes. Well, I mean, as you pointed out, I'm, I guess, more relativistic in that regard. Uh,
Yeah.
I I guess I bought off the socially constructivistic argument that a lot of those stuff are predetermined by the culture in which you live in, although there are evolutionary tendencies in it as well.
Okay.
So
So
that's that.
so do you have an idea of a concept of moral degeneracy then?
um well, I actually made a video on
Yes,
degeneracy.
I
I'm
saw
not.
that video. Yes, I
Yes,
watched it.
yes, on country points. Like, I try not to get into morality. It's very hard to have some sort of authority if you are not, a religious person. I would say it's really. Of course, I, as an atheist, I don't believe in God, so therefore I cannot base my morality based on that. But at the same time, I don't really buy the um, Sam Harris's argument of um, that we could scientifically, I guess, understand good morality, good utilitarianism, and it's very hard to define what is morality in the first place. And although there are what's it called, sorts of morality, versions of morality that are utilitarian, let's say, that maybe you would like your society to have, but that approach is rather functional. I don't really think that there is something intrinsic or spiritual in morality itself, as many religious people would say. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Okay. So
Yeah.
you're you're obviously not religious, so that's one thing. And you also
Yes.
reject the idea that morality is somehow understood naturalistically.
Sorry, can you repeat that? For some reason, I
Uh,
checked on the stream and, I got blinded by my own voice. Sorry.
Yeah, when I say naturalistically, I'm talking about the idea that it can be understood by science or perhaps
Okay,
by
you know what?
reason.
Sorry, please, can you, so that we are more clear now, can you establish morality, just the definition of it, so we could at least agree what we're discussing?
Well, I would say morality as something that is a rule of virtue.
Okay, well, that's rather vague, man, as well. One second, let me actually link this stream on my Discord server. A
I already
stream
have, but sure, you can do it on again if you want.
political beliefs. Yes, maybe we'll get more people. A stream of political beliefs with Anavultus. There you go.
Now,
Yeah. So
my position on morality is that it is produced by structures of authority.
yes. Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting. But then again, there's nothing. You explained the process in which morality comes about, but not, uh, what is morality? That is the question.
Yeah. Well, it is a. I would say that morality is perhaps an abstraction of the idea of justice.
Okay. Yeah.
And
In my
justice,
universe,
yeah,
yes.
and then justice is preferential, and therefore it comes from the preference of a mind and also the actualization of that preference.
Okay. Well, it's still vague. I'd like to tell you like a little story. 1 month ago, I wrote an essay about um Socrates' idea of justice in the Republic for my class, and he has a very strange definition of justice than most people, and there are so many other definitions of justice, even besides Plato and Socrates. So, what would your definition of justice would be? Would it be like more aligned with John Rawls or what?
I would say that it would be most aligned with theories of divine command
Okay.
and in some ways moral positivism.
Well, moral positivism is pretty interesting as far as I can tell. Uh,
Although I'm probably leaning more heavily
yes,
on divine command theory.
yes. I'm not really too familiar with it. What's the divine command theory in a nutshell?
Divine command theory is that morals and justice and good and evil are all determined
Mm-hmm.
by the command of God.
Oh, well, it is what I expected.
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
very simple as a concept.
yes. Well, I mean, it is simple if you have your definition of God and morality, and everybody else also have the same definition. Then in this case, it is simple. But we live in a society where people's interpretations of morality, God, they vary to a very large extent.
Yes.
So um, I don't really think that that helps somehow to clear out what is morality, at least for me.
Of
Um,
course it doesn't. And I don't
yes,
expect it to.
yes. Uh, so I guess. Oh, you also linked it in the general content. Interesting. Sorry. Yeah. So I guess we can't really define what is morality.
Well,
Probably.
we can't have a definition that both of us find acceptable. I think is a better choice of that.
Sure, that is correct. But then again, there are other people that would disagree, and probably I would disagree. What would your opinion be on abortion? Let's say.
I think that abortion is murder.
Yes, I mean I agree with you, but would you support the death penalty?
Yes.
Okay, well, I mean that's murder too. And here's the thing: sometimes people who are aborted, they are aborted because they have, let's say, a probability of 99% of being born dysgenic, let's say, with half a brain or with some syndrome that people live only few days with it. And I mean, in this case, I would think that murder would be justified, or let's say abortion. Um, so, what do you think about that?
I don't think that it would be in my perspective. Now, of course, I'm a religious person, so that takes a
Yes.
different perspective on that. So if you
Mhm.
probe into that, I'd have to give a religious explanation, and it wouldn't be sufficient for you anyway.
Sure. But like with regards to, I see that you agree with the death penalty. The people who are receiving the death penalty, I mean, let's assume they're all guilty. Those people are undesirable, and like our society would be better off if they would be dead. And I guess the same logic kind of for me applies to those unfortunate dysgenic uh, children who are predisposed to unfortunately suffer the life of being worthless essentially and not contributing to society.
Well, I don't view society itself as having moral weight.
Mm-hmm.
So in that sense, the reason why I think uh, the capital punishment or death penalty is justified is because I believe that it is the authority of the government to make such decisions.
Okay. Yeah, I guess that's an interesting argument.
So,
uh
so I think if you have the authority to kill someone, then I think it's perfectly right to kill that person if you have the justification and authority for it.
what are you trying to justify here?
Uh, I'm not trying to justify anything in particular, although the death penalty is the topic here. So, but I
Mm-hmm.
would say that in the case of abortion, we would not be killing someone because they had done something in particular, which is different from capital punishment, in which case we do
Yes,
kill someone.
that is correct. You are right here. But then my argument goes from undesirability, not for moral regressions. Uh, so, I mean, I guess that's what makes me on the right, probably more than you are.
Yeah. Well, I might be even more right because I wait because I reject humanism. I don't think that human desires
Okay.
matter in general, and therefore I don't think
Okay, you are
that.
more right. Yes, you want that.
But I don't
um,
believe in human rights either.
mhm. I mean, I don't know what I should say. Although, I mean, like, I agree that human rights are a social construction, and I think that's bloody obvious to everyone. But I mean, I would still have them because they are incredibly functional for a society, although I would reject certain tenets of human rights, such as, well, freedom of movement, I suppose, if it is on the international scale.
Yes, I think that I would also agree with the idea that freedom of movement is something that I don't think is a general right that people have in any uh, sense because they are human or anything.
Hmm.
But my perception on the rights of peoples is that rights are determined through structures of power and authority.
Yes, yes. I mean, I agree with that. That is the process in how it is. Well, I mean, also, I would also say that, well, mostly it's the societal consensus, but the people who are pushing that kind of societal consensus, of course, those who happen to be on the top of the social hierarchy. Um, think you agree with that?
Well, I don't think it's always necessarily the consensus because
Really? Okay.
because
In what case it is not a consensus?
for example, military
Okay.
conquest.
Mm-hmm.
In that sense, there's no consensus on the receiving end of a military conquest, even if the population on the receiving end is greater than the population that initiates the conquest.
Yes, sorry, it's a little bit different. I mean, I would not classify military conflict to be a part of human rights. Uh, I think.
Yeah, I'm talking from a perspective of not having rights because you're human. I'm having a perspective of power generates rights, and therefore there's a right of conquest that by conquering a people, you get to determine the rights of the people that you've conquered.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I just don't think it really applies to contemporary uh, discourse. It used to be a thing of the past for the most part, as I'm concerned. Um, so I guess I would have to disagree.
Yeah. So you take a perhaps a progressive perspective on the development of rights.
Well, I mean, to be honest, I don't really think what is a progressive perspective. I, you know, I did make it clear in my videos, but I disagree that uh, progressivism equates to lefty social justice warriorism.
Well, I'm not talking about progressivism in general. I'm talking more in the sense of progress on that particular issue.
Well, I mean, I don't know. You cannot really. I think you still bought into the lefty conception of progress. Um, I don't think that having human rights is essentially a progressive thing. Um,
Well, I don't think it is either. But I'm
yes,
talking about how you were saying that it's not uh, it's not relevant in the contemporary sense. But
yes, yeah, yes. I was talking about your example of, when you, as a country, you conquered another country or another people, and then you imposed on it your rights and your values. I guess. I just wanted to say that it doesn't really happen anymore.
well, I would say that the United States frequently does this in some ways.
Um, Well, yeah, yes, it does medals. I mean, especially in the Middle East, countries like Iraq and now Syria and Afghanistan. But those countries, I wouldn't say that the United States has really affected. On, I mean, changed their social values. If you look at what they believe.
Well, I would certainly say that it changes the political structure which produces the values,
Hmm.
or to be more exact, which produces the functional rights in the society.
Yes, the functional rights would probably be a better word because I think ultimately the best drivers of not again let's say organic rights are the people who are popular, essentially, as funny as it might be regarded.
Yeah.
So that's what I think. But I mean, yeah, the United States had a very big influence on in terms of the functionality, the I mean rights in terms of functionality in Iraq, and I'm not really too sure about how it went in Afghanistan. I'm not that educated on the topic.
Yes.
But I mean, sorry, part of that also happens to be just the popular, the hegemonic influence of the West and the United States in particular. So it also has to do with that. I don't know if you would attribute it to necessarily hierarchical power relation.
Well, in some ways it is. In some ways, the United States is also trying not to do that at the same time.
Yes, that's
So,
true.
so I think there is an internal disunity in regards to whether the United States wants to strongly interfere or wants to avoid interfering. And
Yes.
then those two, the thesis and the antithesis, produce the synthesis, the compromise position that occurs
Hmm.
on a case by case
Are
basis.
you a Hegelian as well?
No,
Okay.
I just sometimes use terminology because it's useful.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's so vague. This terminology. I used to be like a fan of his at some point.
Yes.
Sorry, it might be rather off topic. What do you think about the circular view of history?
The cyclical view.
Yes. Oh,
Yeah,
yes. It's like.
I think that because humans are humans and the world is still the same world, and that there are predictive elements that come from a realist understanding that there are things that can be cyclical, but that doesn't guarantee that they will be cyclical.
Yeah.
So in some cases, for example, I heard a historical theory uh, about generational cycles, but then you can easily find counter
Hmm.
arguments to it. So
Hmm.
while there are patterns historically, and therefore there's predictability historically as well, I do
Hmm.
believe that this is not deterministic.
Yes. Yes. Would you say that the right still has a chance somehow to make it?
I think that the right, now of course we define the right differently. I think that the right
Oh,
is
yes.
is
Yes.
pretty much gone already. uh, as in there's very few people that I would seriously consider to be right wing. But
Hmm.
I will say that the righter elements of society can, in some ways, change things as they are proceeding. Although there is a general, I think the term is sinistrisme. It's a French term. I may have mispronounced it. A leftward trend historically,
Yes.
but it,
Yes.
it,
I
it
mean.
doesn't always follow. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it doesn't. And I think that the choices people make can affect this. How fast it goes, perhaps reversals in some places, and because the definition of what's left and right can change to different societies, I think.
Okay. How about that? I mean, here's my definition. I don't know if you agree with it. Uh, I define the right as to be those who are in favor of communities of strength, So what do you think about that? Is it a good definition for you?
I well, it depends on what you define as strength.
Well, well, I mean, I would say to an extent it is obvious. Well, I mean, for example, it would be pushing a certain, let's say, even a quality of life where strong characters of people are being valued. And by strong characters, I probably mean the well, their independence, their potential for violence, not directly violence, but just the potential. Their I guess well, just I guess the influence and the social values that would increase the cohesion of a society, as well as uh, continued, I would say, genetical development through the process of natural selection. But I mean, sorry, that's a story for
That
another.
well, to me that sounds a little bit left wing, but
Really? Okay.
uh,
uh, yeah. Well, that's a funny joke because after I talk about natural selection and continued improvement of mankind, some leftists they would accuse me of being a fascist or something like that.
well, I
So,
consider fascists to be left wing anyway. So
oh, are you a libertarian? I
no,
thought
I'm
you
not a
were on the left.
libertarian,
I cannot, yeah.
but I
Uh,
think that any
mhm.
position that is popular sovereignty or humanistic is left wing.
Well, I'm not sure fascists were particularly humanistic, at least in the modern sense of humanism, not the sorry, the Renaissance sense of humanism, which is pretty much dead at this point, and nobody talking about humanism in that way.
Well, there's different definitions to humanism, but I think a way to define it would be perhaps that humans are perhaps, for example, a humanistic perspective on epistemology would be positivist epistemology, materialist epistemology,
Oh,
empiricist
really?
epistemology. That might be an example of taking humans as the for example the measuring stick of things in the world.
Yeah, I never really heard that idea of humanism before. Um, well, like there are two types of humanism, I guess. The Renaissance idea of humanism that maybe to an extent you have explained, but at the core tenant, it poses the acquisition of knowledge and doing great things. And there's the, I guess, the modern idea of humanism, which is basically emphasizing the value of humans and equality and such, and also secularism.
Yeah, I don't think that you have to necessarily be in favor of equality to have a particularly high perspective of humans.
Yes, I mean, I guess it's just the people who call themselves humanists nowadays. They're very concerned for equality. Um, you know,
Yeah,
I like. I would also think that equality doesn't really matter that much. It's just valuing each other and treating each other with respect, but then also assuming some sort of intrinsic value in each of humans while at the same time being secular. So, I mean, I don't really know how that works, but it's kind of contradictory, at least from my perspective.
yes, and because I'm not a humanist in that sense. I don't have an idea of intrinsic human value.
But sorry, you are religious though.
Yes,
Okay. And you don't think that humans have intrinsic moral value, or I mean, just values?
uh, I think. Well, when I say value, intrinsic value, I mean value of the person, not the
Mhm.
values that they hold.
Oh, yes, yes, value of the person. I clarified it, yeah.
Yeah, and
You
I
don't
don't
think.
think that they have one specifically because they're human. I think the
Hmm.
value is extrinsic in the sense that it is determined by God.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think a lot of religious people would have to disagree with you.
Yes, I
But
know. I know it's not the most popular position, but I think it's the most consistent position
yeah,
from my perspective anyway.
yes. I mean, to a certain extent, I see where you're coming from, and
Because
um,
I'm on the Calvinist side of the
mhm,
issue there.
okay, yes. Uh, yeah, Calvinism is not particularly famous now, uh, even amongst the very religious people. At least the ones that I have had the pleasure of talking to.
Yeah. So what is more common than?
Well, I mean, I guess it would be the idea of humanism tied with sin as well, and controlling one's desire. I would describe in that way how religious people value humans nowadays.
Yeah. And of course the
Most of them.
yeah, and of course the Calvinist perspective is that humans uh, that there's a noetic effect of sin and that humans are naturally evil.
Yes, yes.
And that of course takes the perspective on humans as a whole in a completely different direction from some other
Yes,
perspectives.
yes. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I'm really far from it. I don't particularly see things, in those very binary, categorical positions. Let's say. I I think that people are gray, all of them.
Yeah, I see that. I see a lot of people that have that opinion nowadays.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I don't even think it is very useful to see the world in such a way. Well, first of all, because it's very, lazy thinking, but then at the same time, it could justify a lot of bad things that are happening to people who are perceived to be as morally repugnant, let's say. And, as a person who is on the right, I've been often treated very poorly by some of the people who have those sort of black and white views on morality, let's say, because I'm on the right. They think that I'm an evil person, which is not true.
Okay,
Yeah.
but of course, how can you say it's not true? In other words, what is the definition of evil then?
Well, it is subjective. I would say there is no definition.
So it can be subjectively true then, from at least their perspective.
From their perspective, yes. Although I don't, of course, consider myself evil, but it is much more important how people perceive you than how you perceive yourself. That's what I found, and even I'm jumping off to transgenders right now, but the transgenders, they don't really care how they perceive themselves. They more care how the society perceives them. And this is why they are actively attacking people who don't want to recognize their identity. So, I mean, I would say, sorry, I jumped off the place. Yeah.
Yeah. So do you
Yeah.
use their pronouns?
Well, I mean, I actually responded to two transgender people on my video, and I did have to use their preferred pronouns.
Yes, I
Uh,
am aware. I saw those videos.
yes, yes. So that's that.
Yeah.
But they probably, those transgenders that I use their pronouns, I validate their identity. They probably hate me so much, man. Which is a bit ironic, but I mean, it's whatever.
Yeah. Society always changes, and one day I think that they will once again come into the unpopular category.
Yes, if we base our society on communities of strength, and we look at, I mean, back in the 19th century, the late 19th century, early 20th century, people thought about progress. Progress didn't have a left-wing bias, and one of the ideas of progress was that you constantly improve the genetic pool of one's population, so that through the process of a natural selection, with every other generation, you get stronger and more stronger and more stronger people, and eventually you have no undesirables and weak people left in your society. So that was the view on progress, at least explained by Herbert Spencer and many others, especially in the United States. you know
Yeah. I I hold a more dysgenic position that I think that degradation will eventually overcome eugenics
in our society.
in all societies.
Really? Okay. Well, I mean, I have to disagree with regards to all societies. I think Singapore and China is doing pretty well in that department.
Well, I'm
But
I'm speaking in the long term, thousands of years.
well, I think
But of
you
course,
based.
I'm not a Darwinist, so that's my
Yeah, I am.
perspective on it.
Well, I mean, I'm not really a Darwinist. I'm more like a Lamarckian who also likes epigenetics. Well, I mean, sorry. Um, yeah. Uh, I think you are a bit Eurocentric in your worldview, that you think that dysgenics will eventually win, because it is happening in the West, but there's not really a global trend from what I have explored so far. Like, really, there isn't. Many people are actually returning to traditionalism, and countries like Singapore and China, they are progressive in a way that I have explained. They are progressive in terms of building communities of strength, with which is quite, I guess, surprising for many Westerners to hear, but they are evolving in a different direction. So I will have to once again disagree with
Well,
that.
I'm speaking in a more physical genetic sense. In that I
Yeah.
don't think that eugenics
Mhm.
will be able to overcome natural mutations.
Well, sorry, you seem to perceive natural mutations as something bad. Well, I
I
mean,
think
not
that
necessarily.
it is more likely to be negative than positive.
Yes, but with genetic modifications and special, selecting, it would.
Well, yes,
Uh,
genetic modification would be the way
yeah,
to
do you know
overcome
that
this.
they have recently? I think 2 years ago, they have in China they have modified two sisters, two Chinese little babies. I forgot how they modified them, but the experiment was conducted successfully, as far as I'm
Yes,
aware.
yes, and that's why I favor that position, because I think that given enough time, no matter how good your eugenics are, you will go extinct.
Well, individually, yes, but your people, your group, they would survive. And
No, I don't think that would happen without genetic modification.
um, sorry, I really don't understand you.
Well, I'm a creationist, okay?
Okay.
So I don't think that the current life forms are a product of millions of years of evolution, but rather that they are a degeneration from a perfect
Well,
original life form.
yeah. Well, I mean, I just totally disagree here.
Yes, and that's another disagreement, but
Yeah.
so it all does come back to religion in the end.
Yeah. So I mean that's why I was, I guess, confused by um, your worldview and how you perceive the future to be in terms of this genics. But I mean, I think we have made tremendous progress in terms of our um, evolution. Let's say even microevolution. I mean, especially white Europeans, because so many things have occurred in their society that they have, actually are the most evolved race out of all other races. Um, I mean, the most evolved, of course, everyone is evolved to a same degree. I'm just saying that in the past few thousand years, the white European race has had the most pure mutations um, being happening occurred to them, because again their society, it was changing, and specific traits had to be acquired in order for them to be successful in it.
I wouldn't go that far. I think that a lot of it also has to do with geography.
Well, yes, that what I was explaining. Yeah.
Yeah, right. I think that genetics certainly can be a portion of success, but there's also other circumstances as well.
Oh, of course. Yeah. I was just talking about genetics in particular. Yeah, I mean, even in terms of mental illnesses and stuff like that, sorry, mental disorders, the scientific consensus is that 50% of that is genetic, while the other 50% is environmental. So I guess um, I don't. I'm not making the argument that environmental factors have to be disregarded. I'm just saying that, I mean, pointing out that specific races, they are, I guess, they grew up in a different environment, and as a result of that, uh, um, that environment had an effect on their genetic pool. That's all I was saying.
Yeah, I see what you're saying there.
Hmm. Yeah. In case if I didn't make it clear, so sometimes people don't really understand what I'm getting at.
Yeah. So anyway, is there anything in particular you wanted to talk about other than that?
Yes, it's like we're streaming for like 55 minutes or so, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Uh, well, I mean, I guess uh, pretty much. a few important things have been covered in this stream. It wasn't really an interview; it was more of like a discussion.
Yeah,
So I
and
guess
that's my attention. It wasn't supposed to be
yes,
a one-sided interview.
and yeah, in that case, it could be um, I guess stimulating to both of our channels when people eventually will find it. But I don't really think that there is something else that I want to talk about.
Yeah. But I suppose we found our points of agreement and disagreement in a general sense. So
Yes, yes.
yeah. So anyway, if you have anything in particular you'd like to plug, anything in
Oh, yes, sure. I happen to also have a Discord channel that is particularly growing. It now has 329 members on it. So I guess you could also visit it. And if you wish to talk with me there directly, you can do so under suggestions channel, or just, I guess, tag me there and we can talk, and we could even debate or record a video such as we did with Anavultus.
yes. Same thing here. Anybody that would like to contact me, well, obviously, since I'm the one recording the video, it'll be on my channel anyway, so
Oh,
that'll be
yes.
easy. But if you have any link in particular you'd like to send me afterwards, feel free to do so. So I think we can wrap up there.
Mm-hmm.
Any final statement you'd like to make?
Um, I guess not.
Well, thank you for joining me. If
Mhm.
you would like to have a discussion with me about anything in particular or at some other time, feel free to contact
Sure.
me. Yeah. And thank you all for watching in the beautiful audience. I see you, Birkenhoff. Nice joining us. So have a good day. Thank you all for watching. Anavultus over and out.